So thanks everyone for showing up. I feel like all my presentations, the weather goes bad. It's like, do you really want to show up for a 10-minute presentation, or do you want to lay in bed? But I appreciate you guys showing up. On the opposite side, the coffee is actually delicious. I've been to a lot of these things, and drinking 1 million cups of horrible coffee isn't that great. So welcome. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So we'll go ahead and get started. I've got a little bit extra time, so I can kind of tell a little bit more stories about where I'm from. I'm used to being compressed when I do this. So if I'm talking too fast, tell me to slow down, throw a shoe, no hot coffee, please. But my name is Jermaine Allen, and I have 10 years of learning and design experience, oddly enough from the technology industry. And that is what makes me uniquely different in the EdTech industry, which is what this is all about. It's been a buzzword. EdTech this, EdTech that. It's supposed to be this magical synergy, like that corporate word there, synergy of education and technology. But most of the people that are involved in this industry come from the education side. They're educators who understand the fundamentals of how to manage classrooms and the skill set that goes along with that, but they don't understand what's technically capable from the technology side. So, they can go and they can ask, hey, can we do this, can we do that, but they have no idea how much it'll cost or what the development time's gonna be. And I'm the exact opposite. I come from the technology side, who my education background is from being a corporate trainer. I trained on technology at large trade shows, did speaking events, did all these big arenas, and I taught people about technology, which has its ups and its downside. One, I talk to people about some of the most complicated things on the planet, so making sure we speak at a level that everyone can understand became a key to my success. Something every teacher out there understands. You can't leave any kid behind during the conversation. Two, I dealt with industry with a lot of turnover. Building up a knowledge foundation when you do tech training is very hard. People tend to swap jobs every 6 to 10 months. They love to go bounce from company to company. So you go into a room, you say, hey, next time I talk to you guys, I'm going to teach you guys the next step in this process. You come back 6 months later and the entire room is filled with different people. So you have a little bit different experience than a teacher who faces some of those problems, but they have an entire year, every day, to kind of impact children's lives and go about their business, where I get 1 hour session out of an 8-hour day where everyone comes in and talks about essentially the same thing. This is how our TVs work. This is how our Bluetooth players work. These are all these things. So I have a unique perspective when it comes to how to go about EdTech, and you'll see that going forward. A little bit about the company. We're established in 2014. We're actually spinning this division out of my larger company, which is RTR Digital, which is a digital content company that makes all kinds of digital content, social media management, that kind of stuff. But we also offer a learning and development solution for corporations, retailers, and things like that, because that was my background. And it was so successful that people said, have you ever thought about doing this for actual education? And it really got me thinking about what is the difference between training and education. I mean, is it simply the subject matter? Is it the audience? What about training is different, truly different than education? And when I really started to work with teachers, especially in the Chicago area, I found that fundamentally they're the same thing, but the vernacular is different. We talk about, turnover and all these things, and they talk about intervention or kids moving on to the next grade. They talk about, the summer reset when they lose essentially 3 months of knowledge you taught them the year before. They talk about all these things, but we deal with the same thing in our industry. We just use different words. And so I spent a whole year here basically figuring out, what the language was, what I was missing and where, the crossover was. And what we came up with was something pretty simple. It was a true blended learning solution. And the idea was different than what was out there. And when we talk about blended learning, there's a lot of things that go along with it. Right now, it's all kind of separate. It's, let's do a survey here. When you're done learning, let's go to SurveyMonkey. When you want to watch a video, let's stop what we're doing and go to YouTube. When we want to do a lecture, let's stop and let's do a lecture. And the idea of digital education was the idea that all this would happen within one interface, within one sitting position, within one kind of continuous learning experience. And the content that we develop is exactly that. And that's at the core of what RTR Learning is. We're a digital education company, but we specifically focus on content. And the reason for that is, when we look at all the other things that people in EdTech are doing, most of it is all about the structural aspect. It's the tools. It's how are we going to house this? What tools can we give them? Videos, what can we do with all this stuff? But no one ever bothered to say, what about the core that goes into all that stuff? There's no point in having a content management system if the content is no good. It's like building a wonderful movie theater or a wonderful theater house and then putting on horrible plays. It doesn't do you any good. You can place the pretty structure around it, but if you don't address the core content or the core content, then it does students, it does teachers, it does no one any good. And what you find is that that's what's at the core of our education system. When you strip away all the teaching, when you strip away the classrooms, fundamentally everyone's relying on the content that comes out of books that are test material. All that stuff is primarily developed between 3-4 large education companies, and I'm now the only independently owned educational content company. For the most part, Pearson makes all the tests, they make all the books, they make everything that goes along with it, and so you're kind of locked in that content structure. There's only so much we can do either education policy-wise or as teachers or as individuals to change how the education system works because we don't have the input on the content. And that's the most unique thing about having RTR Learning as a standalone company is I can go places and talk to teachers and say, hey, have you tried working your content this way? Have you tried changing this? And I actually have the power to do it. And that's unique in this part of the industry. So, obviously, the key parts of our content are uninterrupted learning experience. This is something that digital content can offer when it's truly blended learning. And so when you look at companies like Khan Academy or people who just do videos, you've seen LinkedIn Learning, you've seen all those things, not only are they separated experiences that rely on primarily only one multimedia type, but most of them are passive. So you either get something like a YouTube video where you sit there and you try not to fall asleep because they're talking at you. There's no back and forth, there's no nothing going on, or you get something like Khan Academy where you have to click a button, submit to get through every step to make everything happen. And so when you can actually take all these individual elements of EdTech and put them together, have one seamless experience where after the lecture stops, they go, now we're going to show you a video. And instead of leaving the website, leaving the interaction, and going to go someplace else, it starts the video automatically without interrupting what you're doing. Because every time we talk about digital learning or digital content, every pause in the content is an opportunity for that person to decide that they don't want to continue forward. And we all know that. It's like a commercial break and when you're watching movies or TV. Like a commercial comes on, you go, I'm going to get up and go over here, and I may or may not come back. And so the learning experience is the exact same thing. Every opportunity that you give for a break to stop is an opportunity for that person to say, I'm not going to complete this experience, I'm not going to finish this, and they say, I'll get to it later, So the number one key, obviously, for us is having an uninterrupted learning experience. Second, blended learning. Actually living up to the promise of digital education. Actually blending in all the information from textbooks, from videos, from surveys, from quizzing, from all the stuff that now is standalone in different aspects into one continuous experience. So if you go on our website right now, you can go take some 5th grade math courses, you can learn about Facebook marketing, you can learn about all these different things, but when it comes time to ask you a question about, hey, do you currently have a Facebook website? It happens right after I finish explaining the benefits and all these things about Facebook, and it goes, hey, do you have a Facebook website? You don't have to go to SurveyMonkey after, you don't have to go someplace else and get it. And I say, hey, we're going to show you a demonstration of how to set up this part of your Facebook business page. And it happens right then. You don't have to go to a separate YouTube site. We're not linking you to someplace else. And if you look at a lot of the digital education that's going on, that's what it is. And I've gone to many places where they produce courses, and I'm not saying anything wrong with their courses, but when you look in the system, when you look in their learning management system, it's here's an excerpt from a book, read this excerpt. Here's a link to YouTube, now go watch this YouTube video. Here's something else here, and it's not one blended experience, not uninterrupted. And lastly, which you can't see, I didn't know the color was going to be that far off, is responsive content. Responsive content is reactive to either your knowledge level or your interest. And so the idea that if you're halfway through a course and you decide, man, I could really either use some extra help with this, or I want to skip ahead, in the current, not only digital infrastructure, we don't have that ability to allow the content, but in the classroom we don't. We're talking to large groups, so if there's the bell curve, which everyone kind of understands is, there's 10% of the kids super smart, 10% of the kids that are behind, and then for the most part, the other, 80 fall in the bell curve, you're teaching them that 80 because that's kind of your core area. But the kids that are left behind that need extra help, yeah, they can't get that in a large format. The kids that are super far ahead that want to keep moving, they can't get that in a larger format. And in a digital platform, that's something unique. If you can actually build responsive content, and we call it our exit algorithm. It's the idea that we have kind of these quick checks as you're learning. If you get the concept, we're going to give you the opportunity to say, no, skip me ahead, I've got this. But if you then fail to pass the question portion or the quiz portion that's built into it, then we're going to kick you back and say, I know you think you're ready, but here's another example, here's another set of problems because you couldn't pass this portion. So we have automatic interventions, we have notifications to educators that, hey, this person has failed to pass this 3 times, they obviously need some help. And we are what we call data consistent 100% of the time. There's nothing in our content that cannot be tracked, that is not tracked. So I can tell how long it takes someone to answer a question. I can tell what button they clicked. I can tell where they clicked. I can tell you the difference of, hey, this kid's taking 10% longer to answer this type of question. Or this kid is actually getting this very particular type of question wrong. This is where you should talk to him about helping him or tutoring him. And that's something totally unique to digital content that fundamentally you can't do in a classroom. It's responsive. You have to wait until the kid fails a test. You have to wait until something goes bad before you can say, that kid needs help. And that's the difference between having a proactive system versus a reactive system, or what we call responsive content. So right now we actually have a Kickstarter campaign going. We're trying to fund all of 5th grade math. We've already got the first three units made. So just so you know that that's out there. It's actually ending. If there's any angel investors here, just come talk to me. I got a little opportunity for you. But this is kind of the best and worst part about being in education. There's 2 parts of this company. One is personal development. We also teach software, job skills, things like that. We can do software simulations on our website. But what we find is that's where the revenue, that's where the business is. But when it comes to educational content, there isn't a lot of money floating around for educational content. Unless you're completely ingrained in the system like a Pearson or something like that, you know, all that money is government contracts. It's all public funded. It's all through there. So if you're looking to build content outside of that loop, you pretty much got to say, hey, this is for the people, by the people. So it's kind of a group effort. I can basically make this content, make it free and available to everyone. Everyone simply just needs to essentially pitch in, you know, a couple of dollars to get the graphic designers, to get the team together to be able to build this content. But for the first time ever, because you're independent, you're offering the community a chance to actively participate in educating the community. And that's something that's totally unique. It's not just kind of like an employee-owned grocery store. This is something that affects everyone. Whether or not you have kids, don't have kids, whether or not you're here, whether or not you're in Dallas, whether or not you're in California, the idea of building education is universal. Whether or not, even if you're in another country. I have 30% of my users are in India. And so they're out there learning, they're out there actively and pushing, and this is the one opportunity that everyone essentially has to just kind of say, hey, it only takes a little bit from everyone to get this entire thing done. So we have social media, we've got a Facebook. RTRlearning.com is our tag, so you can find us at online, www.rtrlearning.com, at rtrlearning.com on Instagram, and at Facebook with a /RTR Learning. And thanks for the time today, guys. I guess this would be question time.
Yep.
So, very impressive presentation. Clearly, you're good at what you do on the presentation side. How did you start the ball moving with the development of the tech platform for this product?
So, the first thing I did was look at the financial restraints that are typically imposed on content. Over the course of the last decade or so, the kind of digital revolution has made independent content development possible for the first time ever. Whether or not it's high quality camera phones, whatever it is. But I looked at the core elements of what's going to work everywhere and what does that take, and it was easy to kind of see web. It was internet-based design. It wasn't, unfortunately I've seen a lot of schools purchase content that's built in Flash and Flash has been phased out. So now they're having to go through an overhaul of their entire, platform, entire education aspect on the digital side. But the first thing I thought was, what is going to be the most universal format that I can apply, and what skills is that going to take to get that off the ground? And so I started with the base idea of, if everyone just has an internet browser, whether or not it's on their phone, on their tablet, which is something that I actually did mention about our company, was the content works on any device. So you don't have to be on a PC. The experience is identical, whether or not you're on a tablet, phone. Phones are small, but they still work. And so we thought, what's going to work everywhere? And so we started with the base of tech term thrown in here, HTML5, which is basically the fancy word for the coding that websites are built on. And so it's the latest version, whether or not small screen, big screen, it scales to meet any size screen. And obviously button presses, all that stuff work, whether or not it's a mouse or with a tablet. But that's really where we started was, we want something universal. We don't want proprietary. We don't want you to own any special equipment, because there are cost inhibitors when you're talking about mass education that say, I can't assume that everyone's going to go out and be able to buy some special tablet or some special device to make this happen. I need you to be able to do it with what you already have.
My wife's a teacher, and she says one of the biggest problems she has with educating her students is they have people who are not teachers making the decisions on how to teach the kids. And they change that process every 4 to 5 years. So next year there'll be a new reading program in your public schools. So how do you approach school districts, with your technology, when they're changing the way that they want to teach every year? Have you had any luck approaching those school districts?
Actually, I have. In Dallas, I actually worked very closely with DISD, and they kind of explained the ins and outs of how that worked. I didn't so much try to work outside the system as really try to sit down and like I said, figure out where the crossovers, what are the similarities, and really kind of, when I thought of this, that problem, while it seems unique to teachers, until you explain to them that I come from a world where a new device launches every 6 weeks, 6 months, and that content has to be changed or updated, digital seemed like it was the only way. And so there's a nonprofit called Scarce. I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with it, but their sole purpose is to handle the waste of recycling of educational material that comes from when schools have to change. Not only is there a philosophy of difference in teaching, but there's a waste aspect, because all those books that were 6th edition now have to be 7th. And you're talking about entire schools dumping pounds and tons of paper that you have to find something to do with, be recycled. And so how we dealt with that was, in the early stages, we thought, well, if we're going to be digital, we've got to make sure that the content's easy to edit. And that also lowers the long-term cost. So if you're looking at the cost of changing philosophy or way, something that we teach online, I can go back in and do that digitally at almost no cost, versus we're talking about them clearing out an entire set of books, recycling those books, buying a new set of books, and then retraining the teachers on how to do that. And so when we looked at this platform, we thought, hey, if that change happens, all we need is the people that write those curriculums, the people that come in here, just tell us what we need to change, and we can change it. But not only can we change it, but we can do it faster and at a lower cost than what you get from a typical textbook system.
What's your 3 and 5 year goals?
My 3 and 5 year goals. So if you look at the company where it is now, I think the biggest thing for us is getting our users to what they call critical mass. So in the next 3 years, we would actually obviously like to have probably at least 3 years worth of math content laid out. And so we're talking about 5th grade, probably 6th and 7th. When we look at, we started with 5th, and people always ask me why that is. When you start going below 5th grade, you really have to get specialists for early education. When you talk about, elementary school kids and making sure they're developed from K through 4. And so we're really looking at getting kind of the middle school era done of math. And getting that taken care of. And then long-term goals, what we'd really like is to be able to scale and bring on more people in the 5 years pace and really be able to crank this content out at a much faster pace. So for us in that time, it's primarily about scaling and hitting very defined metrics on the number of users we have, the amount of content that we're producing, and obviously the number of lives that we're out there touching.